All right, Mike, if we were having this conversation in Aspen, Colorado today, you mentioned you have a shop up there. That's where you spend a lot of your time. Where might that be? Your favorite watering hole? Paint the picture for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So my manufacturing facility is actually located where I'm at right now here in Denver. But I try to get up to our Aspen arm as often as I can. And that's generally where I have created a lot of good relationships with local business owners and, people that own bars and restaurants and stuff of that nature. Unfortunately, COVID was really, really rough on that valley. So there was a lot of turnover over the last few years. So all of the ones that I used to say and go to all the time no longer exist. That said, the main place that I like to sit down, enjoy a beer, get some good food is Aspen Brewing Company. They just have Aspen Tap and Brewing set up right there in downtown. It's about 2 blocks away from our facility in Aspen. It's a great spot to hang out, dry out. Well, not necessarily dry out, but get some beer in you and dry your clothes out.
I hear you. I knew what you meant, but yes, après skiing, one of my favorite things as well. So let's say we're chilling there after a day on the slopes at Aspen Brewing Company. This is going to be a very proper bar conversation because I'm excited to hear about Folsom Custom Skis, but we want to hear your story before we get there and talk about the company and ski manufacturing. So first question is, how did you get into skiing? Let's start at the very base level.
Yeah, the foundation of the sport. So I'm lucky enough to be born and raised on the Front Range of Colorado. My parents are actually from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where they had skied many times over their youth, and they moved out to actually Loveland, Fort Collins area, Colorado, in the mid 70s. And I was lucky enough to be brought up in that area. And they introduced me to the sport, right as I was learning to walk. Typical, 1 or 2 year old kid sliding around on skis and getting used to it and really, really getting the bug. Another big proponent that really got me fired up on the sport and kept me in it for many years was I have an older brother who is 4 years older than I am. And of course I was the annoying younger brother that was doing whatever he was going to do. So he was heavily into the sport and was certainly somebody that helped me just, get there, as I didn't have a driver's license for many years that he did. And, just encouraged me and always had the older and more experienced group that they were skiing with. So I was always nipping at their heels and, trying to keep up.
And when I look at your background, it's not like you went to school to study ski manufacturing or engineering per se. So I guess I have a question around what were your hopes and dreams when you first went to study biology, of all things, at the University of Colorado?
Yeah, kind of a strange schooling to get me where I'm at now. I certainly didn't walk into college with a strategy of, doing what I do now. When I really first started school, I'm from the Loveland, Fort Collins area. So the university that's closest to that is actually CSU. And I'm one of the first and only members of my family to not go to CSU and graduate from there. So I defected to CU Boulder because skiing was so important to me. Started some programs there, skiing for the free ride program and stuff like that. And honestly, the schooling side hadn't really been established at that point. I was like, well, I'm in college. We'll, kind of see what shakes out. And honestly, long story short, I had some pretty severe injuries pretty early on in my ski career that required some orthopedic corrections, some surgeries. And I really was intrigued by those docs and kind of that path. So biology was, in essence, kind of the foundation to get me moving in the medical direction. So I started, doing enough studying to be able to take the MCATs and go through that. But, as I got through college, the Folsom opportunity presented itself. And it was something that I was just very well suited for, as well as something that I was unbelievably passionate about. So there was no way I was going to, kind of pursue the other end of things. Hindsight's 2020. If I could go back in time, I would have got a mechanical engineering degree with a, a minor in business. That would have been really helpful. Biology's not necessarily being utilized in my day to day here. It does give me a pretty unique approach to problem solving, and certainly look at things much, much different than your average traditionally trained engineer.
Yeah, that story checks out a bit more now that I understand a bit of your background. You got to, for better or for worse, experience the medical side of skiing. So I see where that would have come into play. But I noticed that you ended up working for like a carbon fiber airplane parts manufacturer, and then you were in medical plastics manufacturing. How did those gigs come about in the middle of all of this?
Yeah, so honestly, that's like what gave me the majority of the foundation of what I do today. And I really started working for those companies at a very, very early age. I mean, due to the fact that the family that owned these companies were really good family friends. So I grew up with somebody who's still a really close friend of mine today, and his folks owned the plastic manufacturing company, and his uncle owned the aviation company. So preteen, right as I was even allowed to have a full time job, working summers, getting dropped off by my older brother who had a driver's license, would take me to these facilities, and I'd be doing really low level jobs at a very early age, but I'd be seeing manufacturing process, full way through from, raw parts to, just light machining was generally what I was doing. So just got involved in that at a very, very early age, worked on both of those companies, really from age like 14 until my late teens, early 20s. I think it was around 20 when I finally kind of pivoted out of that and started moving into, full-time schooling. And I was also doing some house remodel work and stuff like that.
And did I also hear that you were doing like CAD engineering as well, CAD and CAM during these times?
Yeah, so that was something where I was lucky enough to work with the engineering departments in these larger scale, injection molding companies and aviation companies, where I would actually get to work hand in hand with the engineering staff and play around in SolidWorks and start drawing some geometries and getting some really simple stuffs identified and worked out there, and then actually driving them to the CAM softwares that start putting this stuff together and actually manufacturing the parts.
One thing that has come up, at least when I was doing my research, was that how did you decide to start a ski company, right? What did you feel was missing? Were there challenges you had with your existing equipment? Where did this all begin? What prompted you?
Yeah, so actually, I co-founded the company with another guy. His name's Jordan Grano. He's still a really small member of this company that has kind of changed ownership a few times to get where we're at today. Me being the primary now, but Jordan was really the foundation of the idea. He back in really 2006 was looking at the bike market, the surfboard market, markets that really already had custom solutions in mind and in place. And then looked at the ski market and said, hey, there's really no option here. Also above that, wow, most skis are actually manufactured overseas, whether that be in China or Europe. So he started putting the nuts and bolts together in his garage in Boulder, Colorado, where we started. And then I came into the picture about, a year later, once he kind of had some of the ideas and, the actual manufacturing foundation in place. I came into it as I was coming out of college, pursuing my professional ski career, and had a really robust engineering understanding, so that when him and I came together, our two minds fused is when it really took off. So, to kind of address the bigger part of your question of if we saw like a hole in the market, like absolutely, that was really our biggest strategy, was to be one of the first to market as a true custom ski manufacturer in the entire world. And really, as we know it, we were the second to market in that space, and have really stayed very true to what we do to this very day.
So maybe that's a good transition to the kind of the how it's made element of this episode, right? I don't know a massive amount about ski manufacturing today, and I imagine most of the audience is in that same boat, right? So, when you describe custom ski manufacturing, what's say like what's the mass produced way to do it, and then how do you make skis?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll kind of give you like a high level of how skis are designed from a macro perspective versus our side, and then we can dive into some of the specifics on how they're actually made because there's a pretty overwhelming amount of processes that are involved in this manufacturing facility. To note, while we're there, we're really one of only 3 or 4 left in the U.S. that keeps every manufacturing process under one roof. So there really is a lot of different things from print to engineer to, all the part manufacturing, all the pressing, all the finishing, every single layer of the cake happens here. And it's a lot. But to answer the first part of this question, when you're really looking at a macro business model, I'll leave names out of it, but your average large ski manufacturer, when they're looking to bring a ski to market, whether that be in North America or Europe, really the 2 dominant markets for the ski industry, they're really just designing a ski for the exact median of everything that they're specifying. So your height, your weight, they want to have a span, let's just use some metrics right off the bat. Let's say 6 foot to, 5'9", 200 pounds to 170. They're going to be designing a ski right in the middle of that in the way that it's flexing and bending and reacting to that body type. And then they're really, really just shooting again for the middle on how that ski is going to be used across, the different, snow types, terrain types, all the different mediums that ski is going to be encountering. That said, if you do happen to live right in the middle and find the exact right ski where you are the median, those skis are, generally work quite well. From our model of what we're trying to achieve here is we just have, a quick disarmed conversation with the client, figure out some simple stuff from, just general metrics. What's your height? What's your weight? We like to have a pretty high level skier background. You don't have to get too crazy in the weeds on that. We just like to understand some big picture stuff like, hey, have you been skiing a super long time? Are you relatively new to the sport? Where did you really start skiing? And what gave you the foundation to bring you current, which is actually a pretty quick conversation. And then we like to segue into baselines. What have you been skiing? What are you currently using? How are these products working for you? If they're Folsom skis, like great, we have all the metrics on that. We can continue to, evolve and add into our process there. But oftentimes, it's people skiing on different, brands and stuff like that. So we really like to know how they define those things, how those things are working for them. We also have our own testing processes so that we're making sure we know, what's relevant on the market, how that stuff's reacting for our own definitions. And then arguably the last and most important piece of the conversation from the custom fit perspective is what are these skis for? What specifically are you tailoring these for? These like, a do everything out west ski that's mostly just going to be a resort ski? Is this one of many skis in your quiver? Something that's more powder oriented, something that's more front side oriented, something that's got a little bit narrower scope. Another big thing to consider is who are you skiing with? Do you have kids? Where do you live in that pack that you're skiing with? Are you the leader? Are you chasing the leader? How does that look? And what does your goal setting, look like? Do you want to have, some skis that are going to kind of force some fundamentals or something that's just going to allow you to have a more user-friendly experience right off the bat? And so once we take all that information, we have our own, calculations, algorithms that actually will adjust everything that we're doing from the manufacturing perspective to suit you better as a skier. And it's, it may sound overwhelming, but it's really just small, meaningful changes along the way. Really, really small little, dial up, dial down on material thicknesses, how much material we're using, what type of material we're using, how that camber is augmented on the ski, all that good stuff. And then lastly, and arguably one of the most fun customizations on our product is you get to choose the top sheet. So as you can see by the few behind me here, we have a lot of fun designs on our website, just folsomskis.com. /graphics. And we got a couple hundred on there that you can choose from, or oftentimes clients just want to actually have a custom graphic built from the ground up, whether they want to design it themselves or work with myself or one of our designers in-house here to actually pull that off. It's really cool to have a ski that's actually got your stamp and your look on it. So it's not just, one of 30,000 produced that year that looks like everybody else's skis on the hill.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much we could talk about here. First thing that comes to mind, I'm going to stick with like the manufacturing happy hour aspect before we get into the art and all of that. But what are the materials that are going into it, right? You talk, I think this is a good material science type opportunity. You talk about after you get everyone's feedback, that's when you can really start, shaping the ski, picking the right material for it. Give us a quick 101. What material is good for what on the mountain?
Okay, cool. So I guess just to give you kind of the main foundation of what the materials are that we use in our skis, it's really plastics of a nylon blend, which is really the top sheet of the ski. Then we use a ultra high molecular weight polyethylene for our sidewall material, our tip fill material, as well as our base material. So what you're actually gliding on the snow with. And then we're using a bunch of different types of composites, from fiberglass to carbon, a bunch of different weights and weaves, depending on what we're trying to achieve there. And then the main foundation of what is really creating the biggest structural component of the ski is our wood core. So we're using a couple different variants of wood types, depending on who you are and what we're trying to achieve with the ski. As wood can drastically change from, what species you're using. So those are the big elements. We also use a big Rockwell 48 hardened piece of steel for our edge. Oftentimes in this industry, you will find some really thin laminates of titanol, which is a type of metal, just an alloy that is really like paper thin, like 0.4 mil, and usually goes above and below the cores. We find that material to be something that we are not interested in working with. We find a lot of negative attributes with it. While some other companies have found success with it, overwhelmingly, all we see is major problems with it. So we just stay away from it and over-engineer our skis in other ways. But to kind of continue on in that vein, we've got kind of three fundamental construction types, one of which is an ultra lightweight ski, something that's intended for walking uphill for long periods of time, and really reducing as much weight out of that product or that ski that we can, while still maintaining a really robust downhill performance, which we honestly feel there's a big hole in the market for that sort of stuff. So in this case, the construction type that we're using for this, which we call our ultralight configuration, is a full aspen core. So aspen being a very lightweight, but still pretty stiff and strong wood to really set the main structural component in the ski. And then we're using a triaxial woven carbon fiber as the composite. And then we're actually adding a graphene additive within our resin system to make that composite work a little bit more effectively. And then the other things, that are really static on this build and static across all other builds are we're using the same plastics, the same metals, all that stuff for the top sheets and sidewalls. We just ratio that a little bit differently in the skis to achieve these lighter weight skis. And then moving into like kind of the far other end of that, something that's like resort. We're not trying to save any weight, something that we want really robust, really strong. The big changes on that manufacturing or construction type rather are we're changing the wood core to a poplar maple bamboo blend. So we really want that maple to be the main dominant, really stiff, heavier, stronger wood in that ski to really dictate the personality and overall structural, feel of that ski. And then we're replacing that composite with 90% fiberglass and only a small amount of carbon fiber. So we're doing 90% fiberglass and 10% carbon fiber, really just to give a bigger weight to strength ratio distribution across the ski. We find that with full carbon dominant skis, they get very lightweight and very stiff, which, believe it or not, is not a great pairing for any kind of hard pack skiing. What it does, the analogy I always use is it's like more or less driving around a race tune suspension in a bumpy road, in downtown Denver. Like you just feel every bump in the road. It's just not a very favorable experience. So that's on the far end of that. And then in the middle, which we get a lot of people that want like a ski that's still lightweight, but still skis the resort well. And then they're taking it and skiing, some backcountry lines and stuff like that some of the time. For those individuals that need kind of that 50-50 use ski where it's half in resort and half, backcountry access, we do have a solution that's got a couple of different types of wood types that we're using, generally a full poplar bamboo core, and then generally our 70-30 glass carbon ratio, just to reduce a little bit of weight, but not too much, and really kind of, thread that needle to make a ski that can do everything quite well for people that really need to check that box. But yeah, that's hopefully the non-confusing high level description of everything that we're using and why.
Yeah. Yeah, I love geeking out around this, and I'm going to put a little summary around this part of the conversation. Just going back to what you said earlier, right? When you're building a ski, you talk to someone about, hey, what are you using it for? It's more than just the height and the weight that a typical ski shop would talk to you about. And the reality is everything I've heard from you is, even though, let's say it's a custom ski, it's really just tweaking the dial on a bunch of different things as you hear what the customer is looking for, right? It's not like you're doing something wildly new per se, but when you hear what a customer is going to use it for, whether it's, hey, I'm going to walk up the peak that doesn't have the chairlift and I'm going to bomb down it, you're going to need a lighter ski for that. If you're at the resort, you're getting on the lift right away. Hey, you can use the more robust, rigid ski. Did I hear that correctly? Like that it's a menu that ultimately allows you to create that, quote unquote custom ski?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, on our website, we do a good job of really, putting out all the different kind of build types on each shape. Something that I kind of jumped over and just got into the actual construction type is really the foundation of the ski is the geometry. So the overall length and the shape is really what dictates the rest. So you can imagine like a ski that's really tailored for soft snow is going to be very wide, and it's going to have compromises in how well that's going to work on front side hard pack skiing. And then on the far other end of that, somebody that's only skiing resort, only skiing, let's say groomers, for example, you want a pretty narrow ski with a lot of side cut on it. That's going to do really well there. And it's really going to have a lot of compromise when it comes to its soft snow performance. So the geometry is the foundation, length, width, how we want all that to look. And then moving into the construction type. And I think you nailed that down quite well, is we have kind of a menu in there that should make sense. But at the end of the day, even if we just have an order pop through on our website, which happens a lot, we still reach out and really check all those boxes to make sure that we have a quick conversation with somebody. No matter the time change, we sell all over the world. I'm having, weird calls at 2:00 in the morning to accommodate to somebody's schedule. And honestly, like Singapore, I talked to somebody in Singapore a few weeks ago, and we're selling all over the planet. So like we really force the hand. If you can have the conversation, let's have a quick conversation and make sure that we're defining everything exactly how we want. Because unfortunately in the ski market, each company has its own little nuance where there's like, okay, here's, the high level definitions of really the main foundation of ski design. And you're going to find variants within each company that honestly just confuse the general consumer. And we just want to make sure we cut right through that, have the conversation, define it how we need to, and then get into the meaningful changes that, are going to make this ski have a better experience for them.
Very important question that just popped up. Where does one go skiing if they live in Singapore? Because you're certainly not hitting the slopes right outside of your front door.
Good question. And I do have all kinds of weird places where I'm having phone calls. I mean, was chatting with somebody in Dubai not too long ago. They were not skiing ski Dubai. They were skiing some very large European mountains, as well as this individual in Singapore. Generally, it's just a clientele that we appeal to. Generally, who knows where they're going to be or where they're working that day. But they're usually travel skiers when we're talking to them in really crazy places like that. And they've got, big trips where they're in Verbier, France for or Switzerland or, wherever for a very long period of time. So, yeah, there's no skiing in Singapore.
I didn't think so. I lived in Houston for a while, and yes, I was a travel skier at that point as well.
Well,
Um,
hey, believe it or not, we do really well in the Houston and Dallas market because they're all coming up to see us pretty often up here in Colorado.
exactly. Hey, the town had no shortage of snowboard and ski shops while I was down there, so there is a
Yeah,
market there, no doubt.
yeah, for sure.
I uh I want to ask you about the business as well, and maybe the most intriguing question that popped up is what was it like launching your company during the 2008 recession?
I mean, as you can imagine, it was an unbelievably rocky road, a very, very tough start for this business. The individual that I mentioned at the beginning of this, Jordan, was really the finance component off the start of this. And him and I launched it in '08, literally November, like right when stuff really fell apart. And we had a rocky road for the first couple years. I mean, we chose to launch our company in Boulder, really assuming that we were going to see a really good local following, just as that population in Boulder, Colorado is usually quite good at supporting local. But unfortunately, what we found out is most of Boulder spends all their money on bikes. And when it comes to the ski stuff, they're not really willing to dig too deep. So they're, really just buying stuff on sales cycles, which, it is what it is. But long story short, I mean, everybody's wallets were closing up at that time. We were brand new to the market. The ski buying market is historically one of the most difficult to establish yourself in and really get that brand recognition, that reputation, and ultimately that loyalty that you're looking for. So we stepped into this in arguably the hardest time that we could have chose. I was quite young, fresh out of college, and was quite hard headed as well. And just said, hey, look, like we got a great product. We really know how to build skis very well. We have good customer service. We're going to keep this thing small and on its feet until it really takes off. And luckily enough, I was in that time frame in my life where I could make those sacrifices, where I could really, not pay myself a lot, work 100-hour weeks, really make sure that I was, on that very far spectrum to check the boxes to keep the business running. And ultimately, after a couple years in business, Jordan decided to bow out, in which I took over with a different group, and honestly immediately moved the company away from Boulder, just down the road here to Denver, just to have some more space for flex industrial manufacturing that we needed. So we started off in 1,600 square feet. I'm in about 9,000 square feet now. But yeah, that recession was tough. It was really tough. And, first 2 years we sold a very, very underwhelming amount of skis, and we had some very big losses to report those years. And, ultimately is hard as those years were, I think it's done nothing but make this company what it is today, with just being, really, really hard as nails when it comes to tough times. Really good at making lean decisions, smart decisions, not being loose with any of our cash, really paying attention to, where our money's going and making sure that we can do as much internally as possible just to keep this thing as, efficient as possible, which is really one of the toughest things, to wear all those different hats of, okay, we've got to, deal with coding our website today, getting that built out. Tomorrow I got to, onboard a new CNC machine, figure this out. It's so many moving parts and components, but ultimately it makes this project more achievable when you're not just outsourcing all that stuff and, spending money hand over fist to even just get, your electric pulled in. That's a significant cost savings.
So there are a lot of tangible aspects to this answer, right? You pay attention to the financials, you bring things in house, you're doing a lot of things that help sustain the company, right? And I guess I'd love to maybe get one more point from you on this. Like, I understand this is a pretty I don't want to say cutthroat business, but a lot of companies go out of business in this space, right? Whereas I believe you've been doing double-digit percentage growth over the past nearly 10 years. So I guess what's your secret? What allows you to keep thriving in an industry where what you're doing and the business success you're having is not the norm?
Chris, that's actually a fantastic question. You are right. There are so many companies that enter this market, whether it be, just a macro company or pre-built, non-custom model that's coming in just saying, okay, here's our skis. We're a new brand, let's go. Or other small custom manufacturers. There has been lots and lots and lots that have come into this market and gone away from it over the last decade. And it's tough to see because I usually reach out to most of these folks and say, hey, like, if you ever, have any questions or want to know, how to manufacture skis, the way that we do, I can help. And we're certainly a unique business in that regard, as we are quite an open book. I want to see American manufacturing come up in total when it comes to the ski manufacturing side. So we're not like, hey, trade secrets, we're closing the doors, you stay away from here. Like, I actually want to talk to these owner and operators and try to help them. But to go back to your main point or question rather, being lean and nimble is by far the most important piece to this. Not having huge financial, attributes that we know we have to pay out to keep, our marketing team or, web development team or whatever it may be, where we've committed to some large cost over, a giant contract. We've certainly just kept that off our books. And we just, that gives us a lot of financial freedom to be able to navigate through these things and then ultimately learn them internally, have my internal team figure this out so that we can do everything internally. And that's by far the most significant thing that has given us the ability to do this. Secondarily is my team, the people that work here and have really helped me get this business to those double-digit growth percentages that you've seen over the last decade plus. It's the people working here. We're all just, it's the cream of the crop. Like, we've got a tiny little skeleton team, and everybody's unbelievably good at what they do. Everybody. And that's, that's just what it's what you need to succeed here. You need somebody that's really passionate about the sport, passionate about the product, passionate about customer service, passionate about, really manufacturing and understanding all of this and really, coming to work clear-headed and ready to go every single day. That's, something that we feel unbelievably fortunate with is, I've had just a really loyal, good, small team that's allowed me to just continue to grow this thing under my control. I guess that's another thing to go back to kind of the financial component is we have never done any large fundraising, none at all, zero fundraising. So we've been operating at just a no debt structure from day one. So the day I took over this company in 2011, it's like, we are not doing any kind of fundraising. I considered it for a while, kind of had those conversations, figured out what that looked like, and then was like, you know what? This company that I just saw enter the market is actually getting pushed out of the market specifically because they did a fundraising round, couldn't really service that debt. The person who was really, me in that company got pushed into some corner of doing something they didn't want to do. And guess what? Everything started to cripple. And so, that happened time and time again in real time in front of me, where I could see, people that I respected and thought really had a good lock on this, just losing their companies through their fingers because they're like, well, I raised way too much money. This company's not really servicing this right. All of a sudden, these VC guys are, starting to get pretty impatient. And guess what? We're out of business. So that's another big thing is we had a very careful growth the whole way through. I didn't all of a sudden say, okay, I got this figured out. Let's blow the doors off this thing. Let's raise a couple $1 million. Let's buy a building. Let's, add in all this new equipment and then let's go. So it's been a really slow, controlled growth. And just really making sure that our product is always, always, always the best it can be. That's another thing. I guess I'm giving you kind of a bouncy answer here, but it's another big thing when it comes to manufacturing is as you're scaling the front end of the business, you need to be scaling the back end of the business. And, our product takes a lot of hard work to get it, exactly how we want it and out the door shipped. And we never wanted to have that issue where all of a sudden our demand was so high that we started cutting corners on manufacturing the product. We always wanted our product to be the absolute best quality that we can get out of this facility. And we feel very, very proud that we've been able to achieve that through these growth stages rather.
So you run lean, you've got the team, you don't take on debt, and quality are some of the things I heard from that answer. I want to go back to the team because I'm thinking about myself when I was in college over 10 years ago as an engineering student. When a college student comes up to you and says, hey, I want to be a snow ski engineer, what advice do you give someone like that?
Oddly enough, how I've sourced every single employee that works for me now is through an internship program that's usually pulling from one of the near universities, which we have a lot right around us here. We've got CU Boulder, DU, School of Mines, CSU. Like we got a lot of, hungry university kids that kind of want to break into this market. And whether they want to come, work for me, that's a much different answer. Or if they want to kind of start their own thing and, go be a ski engineer. My advice, and I get asked this honestly monthly from, a university kid is like, hey, it's always been my dream to own a ski manufacturing facility. What would you say? And the first thing I always say is go through this with either a very strong financial education or somebody that is a finance professional. Because if you're not paying attention to that, it's going to come back and bite you in the worst way possible. You're just going to not have control of what you're doing, and you're going to have to make decisions that aren't appropriate for your business. You need to be very, very, strategically in place on that so that you can figure out, how you're going to move through a bunch of tough decisions you're going to have to make. That's number one. Number two, I always say, have your life in order to be able to work way more than you ever thought you would. Certainly something that I didn't really think about moving into this fresh out of college in 2007, launching the company in 2008. Every college kid is like, oh, college was so tough. And I'm, at finals. Oh no, I had to do finals. And it's like, yeah, wait until you get in the real world here and see what real work looks like. It's a lot different. You really need to make sure that your responsibilities, your relationships, everything that may affect your ability to work very hard are in check. And you need to be in that container and ready for it. So that's kind of like step one and step two. Make sure you got a finance guy or you are yourself. Two, you need to make sure that your personal life is in order so that you're not, trying to raise a family while you're doing this. That's a pretty big false start right there for sure. And then lastly, I always say you got to just keep your curiosity alive. You got to be able to look at a problem, figure out, how to tier it out in the most understandable way possible for you, and ask people around you that may be able to help. We really try to isolate things one at a time, stay curious, stay interested, never put something in a container where it's like, oh, this is just kind of a ghost in the machine. Like, no, it's not. There's a clear problem here and you just need to be able to define it. So that's really ultimately why I feel like I've personally had success here is all of those things were just in alignment for me. The finance side, I will say I had a bit of a shaky start on that, but luckily had some very helpful people in my life that were able to kind of poke me and say, hey, if you ignore this, you're going to regret it. Pay attention, get this in order. And, is my mom, who was a CFO of a company for her career, always says that I got my MBA through just the school of hard knocks and starting a business.
I like that you've emphasized the financial side of things so much in this conversation, because I think when people think about a small business, particularly one that could be based around a passion, whether that's ski manufacturing, craft brewing, a lot of people neglect that part of it. So I like that you've really doubled down on that throughout our conversation today. Since we have had such a meaty discussion up to this point, we have a little bit of time left. We'll finish this on a light note. We got to talk about skiing and snowboarding a little bit.
Yeah.
We were talking about before the interview. You had just come back from Steamboat for Thanksgiving. Where, if it, I know this is a very cliche question, but where is like your home resort or the spot that you like to go? You were talking about, let's say we're getting our next beer at Aspen Brewing. Where is your go-to spot?
So I have two go-to spots. I'm really lucky enough to be from Colorado, and so my family is very well rooted here, and we have had a mountain house for many years of my adult life here, which is just outside of Winter Park, which from my house in Denver here, it's about an hour and 10 minutes from door to door. So it's a very easy, and where I ultimately end up skiing the most, just because it is the most accessible, the easiest with my lifestyle. I'm married. I have a 1-year-old son. It's just easy to be able to hand the kid over to grandma and grandpa and, go about my day. So that's by far my most frequented resort. The second most frequented and somewhere I always want to be is Aspen. Aspen is just somewhere where I've spent a lot of time over many decades and just really fallen in love with that valley. The skiing there is pretty unmatched in North America. They just have shockingly good terrain and very few people. It's really amazing how good that experience is. Every single time I go there, I'm just reminded of it. Like, oh, this, the locals are complaining about this 4-minute long lift line when we're conditioned to these half an hour long lift lines in Winter Park. And you just, you learn to, what I call them is just first world problems. Like you like, oh, you're really going to whine about your, long lift line at your beautiful ski resort in Colorado? Like, no, I'm not. But when I get the opportunity to ski Aspen, I go there more than, really anywhere else, just because it's got great terrain, a big sector of all of my friends that were all, in the professional ski side of things as I was getting out of college, all moved up there. So lo and behold, the majority of my friend group is up there. And again, between Aspen Highlands and Ajax, which is Aspen Mountain right off of downtown there, those two mountains are really hard to beat in North America, like really hard to beat. It's the place, man.
This doesn't need to be in Colorado. Where's a spot that's still on your bucket list that you want to go?
So I have skied pretty much from the far tip of North America to the far, tip of South America and a bunch of places in between. I've never been to Europe ever. And oh gosh, there's just so many resorts over there that I want to go to. Verbier is certainly one of them. Chamonix is another one. Those are certainly on my bucket list. One of the many challenges of owning and operating a ski company is, guess what? You're skiing less because you're so busy during, the North American winter, that it's very hard to take time to really step away from, your duties in the business for a week at a time and actually, go do this. That's becoming something that's a little easier for me to achieve as the company's scaled and I've got more people and, arguably a little less problems, but it can be looked at a couple of different ways. But that said, I do ski a lot of really fun places down in South America. It's been a number of years since I've been down there, but it's usually a little quieter for us during our summer months, their winter months in the Southern Hemisphere. So a lot of Argentina, Chile, really, really cool skiing down there, but never been to Europe. Hoping to get there real soon.
I've done Chamonix, which is awesome. You do need to get over there. The town is just awesome. You take the train to all the different resorts along there. It's super cool. It's definitely a unique vibe. I've done Chile once, right outside of Santiago in the Andes. It was a drought the year I went, so it was nothing special, but it was cool to be shredding in the middle of August. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's I always say when you get to go down to the South, it's kind of the real Wild West down there. Everything is, not quite as high and tight as you're going to find here in America or Europe for that matter. Travel's a little more complex. You just got to be, willing to roll with the punches down there a little more so. And it's honestly just gives it a cool, fun flavor for the trip.
I've got one more bucket list spot for you. Maybe you've been there, but since you mentioned that your parents are from Milwaukee, the Upper Peninsula, Mount Bohemia. Yeah, it's the Mount Bohemia is like at the very tip of the peninsula, and you can get 20-minute downhill runs on a Midwest mountain out there. Lots of tree skiing. It's pretty wild, and it's $109 as of this recording for a season pass, which is unheard of.
I have actually heard of that place, and I've heard nothing but good things. I've actually, one of my longtime old ski partners, I haven't skied with him for a number of years, but kind of back in the competition days, was from the Marquette area, and he was a phenomenal skier and actually talked very highly of that spot. That's something that I really feel that the ski industry, specifically in North America, needs as a whole, is more places like this where it's, the barrier to entry on the sport isn't nearly as significant as trying to purchase an Epic or Icon pass or, just a daily pass at Vail. Peak season is $220. That's a significant cost for your average person that might want to, look into this. So unfortunately, over the last, 3 decades, a lot of these small mom and pa ski resorts have just gone by the wayside. They're no longer in business, and some of the infrastructure's there, but all these things are just gone. And I'm hoping that that side of this industry really gets picked up again.
No, it's a cool spot. The hot tub's right at the bottom of the mountain. You just jump right in when you're done. It's a vibe. Now, we're at the end of our conversation today. We got to wrap up with what's the best way to connect with you, Mike, and Folsom Custom Skis?
Yeah, absolutely. Just everything that we just talked about here is really easily sourceable on our website, just folsomskis.com. We're answering phones 5 days a week here for 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday at 303-248-3418. Or feel free to email me directly, just mike@folsomskis.com. Just to be clear, it's FOLSOMSKIS.com.
Excellent. Well, I will have links to everything we talked about in the show notes page at manufacturinghappyhour.com. It was awesome talking shop, awesome diving into ski manufacturing, talking about resorts there at the end. And Mike, thanks so much for jumping on today's show.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. This was a great conversation. Appreciate your time.
Cheers.